Hey everybody. Sorry, Instagram keeps changing everything, so it's sometimes difficult. Uh, what's up? My name's Artie, and I'm here for AOQ this week. Hope everybody's doing okay. I'm a bit disheveled because it's spring break with my daughter, which is never easy. And this week I have a friend of mine named Brendan White, who is a totally awesome dude. Played in a band called Bad Trip with me. Well, I played in a band called Bad Trip with him. So the opposite, tell you the truth, because he was in the band for a long time before I ever joined. But he's a really cool dude, and he was in law school the whole time we were doing Bad Trip, and it was a killer time. So wait, hopefully this is Handon. Let's see if it works this way. Never easy. Never easy. There we go.
Nice. What's going on, my brother?
Fuck yeah, dude. How you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah.
I had to get coached through this whole thing by my son.
Yes. Oh, what's going on, man? You got a good connection there?
I'm sitting right next to my router. Is it working for you?
Fantastic. So, what's going on, man? Like you're such a interesting guy to me. Like at least your online presence. I mean, I obviously I know you from however many years ago, and you were always like the most interesting. I always thought you were the most interesting part of the old school hardcore scene in a weird way, just because like the whole DMA scene was completely different from the rest of the hardcore scene. And like just because the way you guys grew up and whatever, and there's nothing good or bad about that. I mean, I got to live in an amazing house for 5 years and be around like really cool people, but like what's interesting about you is that you're actually still involved somehow, like at least online. Like you love to talk about hardcore, you love to be involved in like all the sorts of interesting parts of hardcore. Like let's talk about it for a little bit.
Of
Do you
course.
still feel connected?
I still love the music. I mean, it's my favorite kind of music. Although, look, I will say this right away. I definitely like the old stuff better. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I really love. I'm super engaged with contemporary hardcore music. I do, however, or did until a year ago. I still constantly go to shows. I love hardcore shows more than anything. It's the most fun thing in the world to do, even at my advanced age.
I mean, I often say that March 16th was the day that hardcore died, of last
Yeah.
year, just because like I mean, trying to imagine a hardcore show, like the way it used to be now, a year later, it seems like an incredibly difficult situation to imagine happening.
I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it. I turned like really paranoid in the last year.
Did you really? Are you serious?
In some ways, yeah. Well, I live here. I live walking distance from A7 and Tompkins Square. I live in Manhattan, and I have for a very long time. And just walking down the sidewalk, I'm constantly trying to get away from everybody.
But you were always like that, dude.
Exactly. See, you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
that's
you were
just how
always
I've
like,
always been.
yeah, you were always sort
These
of
people are walking
reclusive.
too slow for me. Why are they walking side by side? Let me get by.
Well, that's some classic New Yorker shit. So
yeah, seriously.
I wanna revert back to
Of course.
Bad Trip. With Bad Trip as a band, obviously I played in the later years.
Thank
but
you.
Bad Trip was a band that I felt was very. I mean, you tell me when I'm wrong or when I'm right, but was sort of associated.
You were in the band.
I was in the band, but I was in the band after, when it was post-hardcore, not hardcore. Um, which is something I'm pretty good at, is post-hardcore. But like the you guys were sort of associated with the youth crew, right?
Yeah, we were good buddies in particular with Gorilla Biscuits. You know, our band started right around the same time. Uh, we became friendly with the guys from the band. We just kind of hit it off with those guys. Uh, and you know, played some of our earliest shows with them. So yeah, and we were just friends with them.
How did
Uh,
how did
Other
how did
than
the
that,
hardcore but how did the hardcore thing kind of get integrated into the Douglaston scene? Like, how did you guys get into it?
well, it was me, Fred, and my brother right from the beginning. We were full on like WLIR listening new wave kids who hated heavy metal, thought it was ridiculous, and we just start. You know, I'm a little older. I was even a little older than the other guys in the band. And I'm at least 5 or 6 years older than you. Uh, but like by 1980, I was definitely into like, you know, bands like Devo and B-52s and stuff. And, you know, I just hear about bands like Black Flag and the Circle Jerks. And truth be told, I was, you know, a little freaked out by that stuff. I was definitely not into that when I was 14. I was, as you know, and I hope we get to discuss, you know, definitely into prog rock. I was into Styx. Styx was one of my first favorite bands. Grand Illusion by Styx was the first
Oh,
record I ever bought with my own money.
Paradise Theater, dude. Come on. I love that record. Yeah.
Love that record too. And you know, I got a keyboard. I was really into keyboards. I had taken piano lessons a little bit. And my dad came from a classical music background. That's what he wanted me to be into. And I just, I just I was into pop and disco and then, you know, new wave and prog. And, you know, that was kind of my musical progression.
Well, I think
And
I think that like you guys were famously in a sort of weird way, because I remember a story. I mean, it might have been Porcel who told me about going to see the Smiths in 85, 86, and you guys were all like, you and Fred
me,
had
Fred, and my
gone.
brother, all three of us went to see the Smiths on the Meet Is Murder tour
Yeah, and
together. Beacon
and
Theater.
I mean, I don't know if like those guys got separately into, like, the Gorilla Biscuits had gotten into it in the same way, and Porcel and whatnot. But I do remember your name coming up with that whole situation of going to see the Smiths, which was like a big deal for hardcore kids to go see that style of music, even though it was outsider music as well. So it all kind of made sense, like.
Yeah, at that point in 1985, when we went on that tour, when we saw the Smiths, we weren't really hardcore kids. I mean, just very, you know, like Repo Man hardcore kids. You know, we we were all really into, you know, like Institutionalized and you know, TV Party, Holiday in Cambodia by Dead Kennedys that got played on WLIR. That was our way into hardcore.
So then,
Stuff
so
like
then, when do you start going to shows? When do you start going to CDs and shit?
so in 1985, I went to my first real hardcore show, which was the Circle Jerks and DOA. It was one of the big rock hotel shows at the Ritz at the time, and that was it. I mean, by that point, we were, you know, I think sometime between seeing the Smiths and seeing Circle Jerks and DOA, that was about a 6-month difference, and that was the time that we really went from being new wave kids who, you know, dabbled a little bit in hardcore to really being, you know, into hardcore. But it was American hardcore. It wasn't New York hardcore. You know, it was Circle Jerks, Black Flag, you know, Bad Religion, 7 Seconds, Dead Kennedys, all those guys.
So was it
And
like,
you know,
did it take to the point where you were playing in a band before you were going to CBs every weekend, or like at what point? Because you're very vocal about certain things back in that scene, because you were always been sober, so you remember everything. And that's one
Yeah.
thing I remember playing with you that was fucking crazy, was like how much shit you remember. You know, I don't remember, 2 days ago, but like you would remember everything.
Clean living, man. I recommend it.
You dick. Nothing changes. But like, yeah, but I'm just asking, like when did you,
Um,
when did you
I
start
was
going regular? When did you become part of the scene?
in like after seeing the circle jerks, that was it. We were stage diving. First time I ever did that. It was like stuff we knew about, but never actually saw in real life. And again, it was our friends from Douglaston who went. We didn't have friends from other neighborhoods who were doing this. We just kind of finally were like, let's go see a band. Let's go see the Circle Jerks. Before that, it was, oh, we're going to see OMD, or we're going to see Tears for Fears. Seriously. And we're like, let's check out the Circle Jerks. And by that point, we were pretty into the music. So we saw that, and that was it. This is the greatest thing we've ever done in our lives. And then, Black Flag was still together. I saw Black Flag a few weeks later. Very towards the very tail end of their run. They still had Rollins in it, but they had a couple of like pretty much like musicians for hire on bass and drums at that point, and then he broke up. But we saw Social Distortion, we saw Fear. I forget who else. Scream.
Well, so then when did the idea of starting a band happen? Which was originally called DMA. I know
Yes.
that. Yes.
It started. It definitely was not in our minds at all, even at this point when we were seeing all these amazing bands. We went to see, I believe, a girl we knew went to high school, St. Francis Prep in Queens, with guys in a band called the Six and Violence.
Oh, I love them.
They were like the first time we knew about, here's some guys from Queens who play in a hardcore band. And we're like, let's go check it out. That would be amazing. So we went to see them. And the band that played before them, we had never heard. We didn't even know who else was playing. But it was this band called Rest in Pieces. And they had
You love
Armand.
Rest in Pieces. I know you
love Rest in Pieces. Still do. Huge fan. And it started that night. We're like, check this out. It was Armand was playing guitar and singing at the time. And, they had the two original guys, Josh, the bass player, and Albert, the drummer. And they had this whole crew with them, which, eventually we realized was, the Alleyway crew. It was all, I remember very clearly Tommy Carroll and this guy we knew as Mark Goober. I remember them being there, and a bunch of the other Alleyway guys. And, I bought their 7, the legendary spooky song 7-inch. I bought it off the band that night.
You still got it?
Oh yeah, sure.
Awesome.
I
Love it.
I have all my stuff. I have all my.
Oh, I know you were like a classic collector. I remember one thing I remember about you was the Star Wars toys, which you always made sure that you'd like. I fuck that shit about leaving them in the packages. I take them out and I make scenes.
Yep, me and my brother. It was always me and my brother. And he didn't last very long in the band, but he was instrumental and all. He was right there with me.
Well, let's talk about that.
So
what did Whitey play in the band? Was he playing guitar? Okay.
He played guitar. And he had taken guitar lessons, and I had taken piano lessons.
So but you were playing bass from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, no, not exactly. I'll tell you what happened. So we saw Rest in Peace, and that was it. We realized that there all these bands were in New York. We started hearing about them, and there was a guy from the Alleyway crew who worked at Aunt Bella's Pizzeria with my brother and Fred, and he started telling. He's like, my friends are starting this band, sick of it all, and a couple of them also play in this band Straight Ahead, and that was it. We started going to CG.
You love Straight Ahead too.
Yes.
That's another one. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. So you guys were talking about all these bands starting, and then it was like, oh, okay, let's start our own band. Is that basically what happened?
We went to see them at CB's. We were like, fine, all right, we've been going to all these rich shows, let's go to CBGB's. I mean, we were just these, and look, Douglas, and I mean, it's Queens, but it's really a suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, we were these suburban kids who finally, CBGB's to see a hardcore show. And again, that was it. We were fully hooked on the New York hardcore scene at that point. Agnostic Front, Victim in Pain became like the most important thing in my life.
Not Age of Quarrel?
And then we just
wait, stop.
What's that?
Do you prefer Victim in Pain over Age of Quarrel? Or like
I'm a Victim in Pain guy. I'm
a
Victim in Pain guy.
Wow, you're one of the first people I've ever met to say that. Okay. I mean,
is that really true? I thought it was pretty much 50-50.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. Like maybe it's because I'm friends with Paris on Facebook and he just like inundates you with, the weirdness of the Cro-Mags. But like,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think AF might be a little bit more legendary because they've stayed together, sort of, whereas the Cro-Mags became this shit show of like lawsuits and bullshit. But Age of Quarrel is a fucking classic.
It's the more, at this point in the history, clearly the more influential record. I would say in 1986, when we started, Victim in Pain was definitely the more influential record.
Fair enough. I get it. I get it.
And for me, it definitely was. I wasn't able to get a copy of Victim in Pain. That same guy who worked at Ambella's, who was from the Alleyway Crew, Ray Primus was his name. Gave us a dub tape of Victim in Pain. I just sat there listening, trying to figure out what the hell Roger was saying. And then got to see it.
Sorry.
And we just started seeing Warzone, and Warzone was the band where we were just like, we got to start our own band. We saw Todd and Brad, just Bad Mite, hanging out in front of CBD with these young kids. And suddenly, they got up on stage and started playing. We didn't know who was in Warzone until they got on stage. And we're like, oh, that's the guy who's the bouncer at the Rich shows, Raby. We didn't know that. We were total, green suburban kids who knew nothing about the New York hardcore scene. And we're just like, we could do this. Let's start a band. And that was it. I was going to be the singer. Fred was going to play drums. My brother was going to be guitarist. And our friend Travis was going to be the bass player. I think he had played a little bass in a high school band. But we never even, the first practice was so ridiculous. And, Eric was our good buddy. And, he was sort of like, we were all into the classic rock scene too. And that was what we had in common with Eric and a little bit the new wave scene.
I mean, Eric was definitely always, I played with Eric probably longer than you did. And he was definitely a classic rock guy. What the thing about Eric, we could talk about this later, but is Eric was probably the best songwriting drummer I ever wrote with. He just, he had his issues with things, but when you were writing, he was so good at writing parts. He was having ideas. Yeah, he was a joy to play with, honestly.
But I'll tell you this: Eric finally came up to us. It was obvious that Fred,
Well,
Fred
he lived on the block,
drums.
right? So he was living on Knollwood.
He lives a block away from me.
Yeah.
We all did. We were right there. And Fred was the more natural for the frontman role than I was. And Eric just is like, what the hell are you doing? I'll play drums with you guys.
It's funny. It's funny you say that though. I didn't know that you were potentially the singer because you wrote a bunch of lyrics for a lot of the songs, and your lyrics are really, really good. And Fred's lyrics are awesome too. But it always kind of surprised me the stuff you wrote on Fear and Loathing, and I don't think you wrote too much on Buzzy. Not maybe.
No, I couldn't. I was in law school at the time. I was just too busy.
So anyway, continue. Sorry.
I wrote I wrote the lyrics for one song on Buzzy, but yeah, I just didn't have the time to devote, which I regret. I mean, not that much. I mean, I needed to, finish law school.
No, Fred did
But,
a great and Fred did a great job. Fred did an incredible job on that record.
Fred's a great lyricist too. We were
Amazing.
lucky. I mean, I think we were both good lyricists. But
Absolutely.
yes, I was going to be the singer. Without that was the idea.
Okay, so
but,
when do we get into the lineup of the first 7-inch? So
well,
Eric joins the band. Eric joins the band.
So that we never would have gotten past to a second practice without Eric. I mean, he, that was, okay, we're an actual band now, which, also required me to go out and buy a bass guitar and learn how to play any sort of guitar type instrument, which I had no experience with in the slightest. So I just bought a cheap bass at this place over in Great Neck, and it was just like, okay, so I put one hand here and I do this. I only knew how to play, but I got picks, and I never even attempted to learn to play with my fingers. I just did it with a pick. And the first song I learned was Blind Justice by Agnostic Front. And then I got insanely ambitious, and I decided to try to teach myself world peace. So yeah, I guess we had both.
Oh.
Yeah. And not that I could play it well, but thankfully I've always had a good ear. I mean, I have very little. You played the band with me. I am not a technically talented musician.
No,
but I always had a pretty good.
You flatten your fingers. You flatten your fingers on the bass.
That drove Don
you
Fury
bend the
crazy.
Strings. Yeah, I remember that very vividly.
Because in the studio, he'd be like, your pitch is just ever so slightly off because you don't play bass the right way.
Yeah, and we'd just all be like, dude, don't worry about it. It sounds great. Like, who gives a shit? But, I mean, we'll get it to Don later. Don actually
Sure.
asked me to do a video of, like, my memories of Don Fury Studio at Spring Street. And I'm like, shit, like my memories are like, when he got arrested, and like we were sitting there for 3 days in the middle of recording a record, and I'm like, fuck, like the only things I remember are having Lombardis and not finding parking. I mean, like I was like, shit, I don't know what to say about this.
It was 10 times easier to parking then than it is now.
That's true.
But yeah.
But so all right, so
those were experiences.
So like, how did you guys like?
Okay, so
were you playing shows? Were you playing shows with the?
Oh God, no.
I mean, how did the 7-inch come about? Like all that shit. Like.
Okay, so we get it's the four of us, me, Eric, all living within a couple of block radius, and we come up with the inspired name Douglaston Mosh Association. We wanted a 3-letter name, which was like the hardcore thing to do. And there was the Douglaston Manor Association. I think you probably know about that.
Of
like
course,
the Homeowners Association.
Yeah, $700
so
a year.
Yeah. So we were the Douglaston Mosh Association, and how amazing would it be if we could actually put out a demo? Nah, we'll never be able to do that. How amazing it would be if we could play CBGBs. Yeah, as if that'll never happen. But we started writing a few songs, and our friend Vinny Alaperti, I don't know if you know him, but
no.
he was from Douglaston, and he was very much a part of our crew at that time. He went to Circle Jerks and DOA with me in my first show. He was a soccer player, and he's like, my friend is this great soccer player, but he also plays guitar, and maybe you guys can use a second guitar player. And so he introduced us to Marcos, and the rest was history. Marcos was looking to play in a band, and we needed another guitar player. So that was it. He just started making the trip out from Jackson Heights.
So Marcos, not to
us.
interrupt you, but Marcos was from Jackson Heights, which is where Gorilla Biscuits is from, and like a lot of the hardcore scene guys were from. Yeah. So does that play
and
a
that
part?
was big for us.
Right.
For sure. Because we were, we lived on our own little peninsula, and we're not scenesters, and as you sort of pointed out when you first started that, we were in our own little world. We needed Marcos. He was a better guitar player than my brother, and he had his own song ideas, which was great. And eventually, we did a basement tape, which we brought to Dwayne at Some Records. And we're like, "Do you think we're ready to do a demo tape?" And he's just like, "No." Uh, so we practiced a little more, and when we started playing parties, we were like that neighborhood band that would play parties. We were not playing hardcore shows,
Right.
and we played one. Marcus's cousin was having a big party in Corona, Queens, and that was the first time we ever really played before an audience. And a lot of people from the hardcore scene were there. I remember Walter was there, Freddie Alva was there. The guys from Outburst were there. That was the first time we met those guys, and a bunch of other people. And it was just fun. Then my brother graduated high school, and was going away to college. And he's like, that's probably it. And we sat around all the summer of '87. I don't think we really did much. And then Fred was like, I know somebody from high school who can play these plays. And he's like, our friend Luke. I'm like, I remember him. He was the lifeguard at the pool. Sure.
Yeah.
And Fred's like, he's a sick guitar player too.
He's a sick guitar player. He's great. He's amazing.
So he comes in, and we're like, here's our 8 songs. He's like, okay. Like 30 seconds later, he knew all 8 songs. And we're like, so this guy's an insanely good guitar player. And he was willing to play in a band with me. So that was great. And then we played a few more parties, and we just started getting a little more serious. We started writing songs, and we put out a demo. And then that's finally when, we started being able to actually play shows. We still played at more parties, but then we finally got a gig lined up at Right Track Inn on Long Island. That was our first real show at a club. We played with Up Front, Our Gang, I think Pressure Release, and another band, who had gone to high school with Fred, Bustin' Out. I don't know if you knew those guys.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know them, but I know their name. Yeah, they went to Malloy. With Fred.
A couple went to Malloy, yeah, but they were sort of that Eastern Queens, out even beyond like Bayside and Flushing.
Yeah.
The more new, they were also kind of like us, kind of like new wavers who kind of went into hardcore rather than metal kids who went into hardcore. So yeah, and at that point, we put out our demo, and Freddie Alva then, put us on the New Breed comp, and that was huge for us.
Huge, yeah, huge.
And I think that point, yeah, we were really, and we had been going to shows for this was like a 1.5-year process. As you know, we're a slow moving band. We weren't one of these guys who started and had our first show lined up 2 weeks later. It was a 1.5 years at least from start until we played our first like club gig. So yeah.
Yeah, no. Like it's really interesting. You guys were such a anomaly in the scene at the time, and so like how did the thing with Wreckage happen?
Well, we did our first 7-inch. After being on New Breed in the demo and playing, a few shows. Somebody liked something. Something More was our song on New Breed, right?
Yeah. Oh my God,
yeah.
Great song. Yeah, love it.
These kids who we didn't know heard Something More, thought, hey, these guys are a pretty good band. It's the only song we only had that in the demo tape out, and he's like, we'd like to do a 7-inch for you guys. We're starting a label called Bell Bottom. So, like, okay, I don't remember. I think we actually paid for the studio time. I'm sure we did. And we had done our demo at Don's, so we went right back to Don. And we thought were pretty good songs, and it's still like 100% like hardcore, fast hardcore.
No, absolutely, but it was good. it was
And,
different, and it was different. It was different, like without a question. Like from the very beginning, I felt like what you guys were doing, like I would have never joined the band. I mean, granted, you had Fear and Loathing by the time I joined the band, but like it was always because I was never I never connected with the youth crew scene. Like I never. It wasn't just you got pretty involved with the Long Island thing via me. I mean, not involved, but enough to
yes,
know that we were
we
doing
were
something.
chameleons. In
We were
terms of
doing something
hardcore scenes,
completely
we were
fucking
always
different.
we just bounced from thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're just having fun
Yeah,
because, like, what Bad Trip always represented to me was like, as ambitious as I was as a musician. Like I never thought of myself as being like super ambitious, but I just knew that like I wanted to do something more than what was going on. You guys always knew that this wasn't going to be the rest of your life, and
I mean,
you were having fun, and you were
me,
going to do
Fred,
something
and
cool. Which I mean, I want to get through into the Wreck Age stuff, but I really, 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 and we can go over an hour. I really want to talk about what you do
okay,
for a
good.
living
I will
for
probably.
sure. I really want to get into what you do for a living, but let's get back into Bad Trip. And like, so you put the 7-inch out, you start playing like real shows, shit like
Yeah,
that, like get
and he
embraced.
had made friends with some. Uh, this to me, everybody has their own golden age, but from '86 to like '89 for me was the golden age of New York hardcore with the youth group bands and the alleyway like affiliated bands and just bands like Underdog and Token Entry. I mean, to me that was the greatest era for New York hardcore. Uh, and me and Fred, I mean all the guys in the band, we just had one rule. I don't know if we ever expressly said this to you, but we never wanted any two songs to sound alike. We wanted each song to have its own identity, like rather than there being a Bad Trip sound. We
Yeah.
kind of just wanted to be a song where each song was totally different. Probably came from being like new wave kids who got into it. So that and like being influenced by bands like 7 Seconds and stuff, that definitely like
Well, I remember
kind
talking to
of
you about like my favorite 7 Second stuff is the Praise EP and what the fuck is the record? Soul Pulse Revolution. Like
right, sure,
like I mean, and that's an
Art
age thing.
Cell,
But New Wind, like
right.
New Wind, like these were such original, weird, different records that were done year after year after year. And I felt I definitely can see that in Bad Trip, where it was like you guys just wrote songs and didn't really give a shit about if it fit in with a scene or not. And it's interesting because that's a difficult thing to do when you're like, I mean, just at our advanced ages, the amount of time it takes to do all that stuff, to like write songs and work together and like, 2-3 days a week and you get traveling and blah, 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 blah. It's a lot, it's a lot of
Tell me about it,
effort. It's a
because
lot of effort.
if I'm permitted to do a little detour here, I'll tell you that I got together with Fred over the weekend, and we talk about all sorts of things. I mean, we've been friends a very, very long time, long before we ever started Bad Trip. But Bad Trip usually comes up a little bit anytime we're together, and I was talking about both of us, during this insane 1 year we've been experiencing. Both of us talked about how we're going to write a new Bad Trip album. Let's do. This is the time.
Yeah,
I
do
have
it,
all
dude.
these ideas. We both had all these ideas. I have tons of lyric ideas. We could do this. And I was like, I could write a hard in an afternoon. And then I tried to do it. And I was like, and this is ridiculous because Bad Trip was not like a major band in any way.
Yeah, of
But,
course not.
I'd be like, yeah, but, these aren't, the song ideas I've been coming up with, we really put a lot of work into doing it when we were doing Bad Trip.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
I sat down and realized that we can't just do that. I can't just sit down in an
dude,
afternoon
there's no
and
way
do a
to me
Bad
that
Trip album.
listen to me, that like I know the stuff that we did together, but like the Fear and Loathing record is such a great record. It's such like well put together ideas and everything. And like one of the things I always envied about you was like you had this like awful bass style, but you know what? You were writing stuff that was fucking great. And like, you wrote
Thank
to me
you.
earlier, about like maybe I had a bigger ego than the band, and I totally get that but what it's not ego. It was you going like, hey man, I want it to sound like this. I wrote this song. Like I know is a great song.
I
And
had strong ideas about what I wanted to do musically.
yeah,
Even though
but
I'm not a
but they were
technically skilled
good. They
musician,
were
I knew what
good,
I
and it
wanted
was,
to do.
man, if anybody thought it sucked, I'm sure they would have fucking spoken up. But it didn't. It was really, really fucking good. So let's now get to when you meet Pablos and Amber. Like, how did that happen?
Sure. Totally brokered by Don Fury. We if you say you were somewhat ambitious, I mean, the guys in our band were just not ambitious, in terms of being in a band. I
Oh,
mean,
Sharkos was. Come on.
he was by far the most out of us. But me, Fred, and Luke, I mean, we were not ambitious like at that time, like musically, like we just weren't like, yeah, let's get out and do this. We were neighborhood kids who were. This was so much fun for us. We accomplished 1,000 times more than we ever thought we would when we started. But then we would sit around for 6 months and be like, oh, we haven't played a show in a while. We haven't practiced in 3 months. You want to do an album? We should start we should start playing again. It was just kind of like that. And, I think we started bouncing the idea off Don that, we like to self-produce an album. At that, we had the songs, but we didn't know what to do next. We weren't on a label. Even though we were friends with like a lot of people, we weren't part of the youth crew. We weren't part of the alleyway crew. And, I worked weekends. So a lot of times I didn't get to go to CBGBs. We had our own world in Douglaston. So we just didn't have the natural connection. But, we knew Don, and it was kind of like, what if we were to, pay you whatever? Here's what we have. We want to do a record, and then maybe we'll see about how we can get it released.
Hey guys,
And then,
want to meet Amber and Pablos?
it was, yes. I mean, almost literally, exactly. And he's like, I have these people. They know your band. They like you. And they were fantastic to work with.
Oh
as
my God, great. Yeah.
They gave us total, artistic, musical, in terms of we did not want to do generic, hardcore artwork for our t-shirts and our record covers. And they were totally cool with that. Our music was definitely, things were just getting more crunchy. And I mean, yeah, I think we were the most metal we ever were, around the time of Fear and Loathing.
Super Metal Brothers.
But,
yeah.
yes. but we weren't, we were definitely not looking to be like Buzzard or something, obviously. And I'm sure.
No, and that was like,
that's not what you were looking.
It was shortly, I guess Fear and Loathing hadn't been out very long before I got asked to be in the band, because you guys went to Europe and had like your big fucking meltdown, which I'm not going to get into unless you want to. And Luke.
Well, yeah, I mean, after all these years, I mean, I'm very thankful to say, we all get along. I'm actually getting together with Eric on Friday.
Dude, I mean, there's no person on the earth I miss more than Eric. But yeah, I mean, like, it's no, I totally get it. But like, you guys were sort of imploding.
And as I said to you in our text, we were imploding. That was close to being the end of the band. It really was.
So Fear and Loathing comes out. You guys go to Europe on tour.
Well, we
You
go
have
on
a.
tour and then Fear and Loathing comes out.
Oh, really? Okay, so you went on tour before the
Yeah,
record came out. Okay, all right, I didn't know that.
not by design. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course. Well,
you
there
you
was a
you you
issue.
know
There was an issue
you've
with the
lived through
artwork,
that.
and yeah, yeah. I mean,
Every musician on the planet has lived through that one. You know,
but
we
but the
did the
tour
tour
was
without
good.
the album.
The tour was pretty good until the incident in Italy,
No, it was
and then
no. Everything about that tour was a catastrophe. And
what was wrong with it?
before that happened, you know, plenty of other catastrophic things that happened on that tour. We got deported from England. You know, we had
Oh,
to
yeah, I
sleep
remember
under
that.
the Eiffel Tower for 5 days because we had nowhere else to go. We just slept in the van under the Eiffel Tower. You know, gigs getting canceled, you know, the usual stuff. I mean, we basically, I mean, we really did, and I know you're a fan of this movie. I mean, we really did live through 90% of Spinal Tap. I mean, between that and our American tours, I mean, every ridiculous thing you can imagine,
You got
you know,
that,
including having like,
dude. That tour
huh?
generated so many one-liners that you guys would say forever. Like, I mean, what did they say to you at the border of England? I can't remember. It was like it was just
Uh,
somebody said that.
Chris, you're not going to believe this. 7 rejects and a vehicle, a bloody vehicle. Yeah, I mean, that never left us. I mean, I think we actually used that as the Matrix like scratch on one of our records.
You did actually,
Uh,
but I mean, it's classic shit. Like you know, I felt like as far as the wreckage bands got thrown into a fray of shit in Europe, like you know, like back in the day when you had to, you know, like meet up with some vegan fucking dreadlock dude with a van who smelled really
oh yeah,
bad,
oh
and you
sure.
get
I
in the
mean,
van
that
and
was
like,
you know, most of the. But you know, I'm still friends with all those guys on Facebook.
yeah, me
It's
too.
fantastic.
Me too. I mean, I
It's
loved all those experiences, and one of the big reasons that besides the fact that I really love the band, one of the reasons I really wanted to join the band was because I knew you guys were going on tour in Europe, and I wasn't sure if that was an opportunity at the time that I would ever have
yeah. I
again.
mean,
And
we were one of the earlier bands to do that.
and I remember like that first tour that we did together was, you know, I guess it was still Fear and Loathing. Maybe the Elevator 7-inch was out, I think.
I think we had just I think we were touring on the Elevator 7-inch at that
But
time.
like that was crazy because we were selling out like places, and then I would get
You
drunk and
must
get
have
on
thought
stage and
this is amazing. You know, we had done 3 absolutely disastrous tours. You know, 2 American tours and a European tour that you know were just one misadventure after another. And then we did that quickie 2-week European tour, which I had to just squeeze between 2 semesters in law school, and
it,
that was.
it
I
was
mean,
great.
every show was mobbed. You know,
Yeah.
Fear and Loathing was actually out. You know, people liked us.
I was doing
Germany,
I
like
was going
you know,
I was going up before the encores and doing Scorpion songs a cappella.
yes,
I
and
remember
people
the
would
first
sing
time I did that, you
along.
guys were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it." I just went up on stage and
It
started
worked.
singing. I started singing "Holiday." Let me take you far away. The whole crowd started singing it.
Yeah, Rock You Like
Oh
a
my god!
Hurricane was enough. But once you start getting into their like, you know, their lesser known stuff, yeah.
But it was fun. It was hysterical because I remember the first time we did it. I forget where we were, and like we were all standing on the side of the stage with like 500 kids, and they're like, ah. And I just walked up on stage, and you guys were like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it." I just went up to the mic and started singing, and the
Right,
whole
and you
crowd
know,
started
Artie,
singing.
I have to, you know, I have to say this. You know, you really, you know, reinvigorated our band, and you brought your own personality into the band, which was huge for us. You know, I mean, it was including songwriting. I mean, you know, you were also heavily involved. Me,
Yeah,
you, and
well, I
Eric
mean,
would sit down and do a lot of the songwriting for the Buzzy LP.
and Sharkos did as well. I mean, he was a little bit more removed at that time, but like, you know, I felt like, you know, let's get into that period. So like, with Fear and Loathing comes out, Luke quits. You know, the whole thing with Marcos happened. You know, you know, I joined the band. we do the Elevator 7-inch, which was honestly probably one of the best things that Bad Trip ever did. To tell you the truth.
Thank you. We
Yeah,
love
I mean,
that
I know
record.
you wrote a lot of that shit, and I think it was just fucking stellar. Like everything about it, even your bass tone. You know, for as shitty as a bass player as you think you are, it was fucking good. But like, you know, like then we get into Buzzy, and Buzzy was a really difficult thing because you were in school and Fred was in school, and it was just like it was so difficult to like concentrate with people, and like Marcos was all over the place, you know, like you know, it was basically Eric and I were kind of the only stable like guys that were like hanging out and doing shit. And in
You
fact,
guys were holding the band together at that time for sure, for sure. And
but I was
luckily,
not,
I still lived
I
right at
wasn't
the block.
writing, as a, like you guys, you and Marcos were writing more than I was, even at that point. And, you know, like I was adding some character to it. And obviously on those tours,
Yes,
Fred's voice
very
was
much.
fucking gone. So I just turned into the fucking lead singer half the time. But, you know, like,
Thank you.
that last tour we did, as awful as we thought that Buzzy at the time, all of us hated that record. Um, it was crazy because like, so what, we had a bass player who played for a week before you got off of
Yeah,
school.
Marcus' cousin George. You know, again, you know, it's Eric, if you're out there, you know, I still blame you for this, but
I doubt he will be. Yeah, yeah.
you know, I was like,
But it wasn't that
last
bad.
final
He played.
is on like 20.
He played great, and that tour was nuts because Mono
Oh
Matter
no,
met
he's a
up.
better bass player than me. A few people came up to me once I showed up, and he was like, "What happened to the old bass player? You know, the other bass player. That guy was better than you." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, I accept that, but you know, I'm the actual bass player of this band, so you just gotta, you know, deal with it."
Well, okay. Regardless of that, yeah, I like that whole period was really interesting because like everything had changed at that point. Obviously, you know, Bad Trip was part of the youth crew scene and all that shit, and then things had evolved, and Quicksand had happened at that point,
There's
and
a
you know,
whole
like
intermediate period. If I can just interject for a second,
please, you're the
there
historian,
was
dude.
there was about a year and a half stretch where our primary connection was with the ABC No Rio scene. When you know the CB
So
scene was
but
sort
when are
of,
we
you know,
talking about
falling
that? What
apart.
years are we talking about here? What year are we talking about?
1991,
Okay.
1990, 91. That's how we made our connection with Go, and you know, eventually toured America with them. You know, we were playing with at ABC No Rio with bands like Rorschach, Born Against, Citizens Arrest, you know, and other bands. And you know, that was for those couple of years the New York hard scene, which was, you know, a completely different thing from the '80s CB scene. Uh, but you know, we were never really one of those
Right.
ABC No Rio
And
bands.
the same thing goes for moving forward where you got more associated with the Long Island hardcore scene because of me.
Yeah,
And
right.
you know, like you were never really part of that either. You know,
And
like
we were
you
never
guys are
really part of the CBC. I mean,
always on the fringe, always on the fringe, but interesting and cool. And you know, like I think a little bit of a lost classic. I mean, Buzzy is to me a great post-hardcore record slash emo record that really got the shit end of production. And you know, like
well,
and
you were sitting there. Yeah, go ahead.
Fred was a bit of a mess at that time. You know, like it took him a long
I
time to get the
was
vocals
I was
done.
barely present.
You weren't, yeah, you weren't
You
there.
know,
It was like
I
kind
pretty
of
much,
Marcos was there more than anybody, and then it was me and Eric,
yeah.
and it was just like I don't fucking know, you know. Like I mean, Walter started producing it at the beginning, that fell through, like it was just a shit show. But I do listen to that record with a lot of love, you know. Like I felt like it was a cool record that could eventually sound better if we tried harder. But
Yeah, you know, you and Fred got to talk. he still wants to get it remastered.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get it
I'm
remastered.
kind
We're
of
not
like,
gonna
look,
get it
you just
remade.
got to accept that this is the way, this is the record. That's how it came out. I mean, you were sitting there in the mixing desk when we all heard it, and it sounded phenomenal
It sounded
on
phenomenal,
speakers.
right? And then we got it home. And we were like, "What the fuck happened?"
Yeah,
It was
it
crazy.
was in the mastering. You know, do you have a cassette version of it?
No, dude.
I have the cassette.
You know, I was living with
The
Eric at the
cassette
time, and like
good.
Eric and I were both
Yeah.
like, I'm never listening to this record again. I literally like, I probably didn't listen to it for 20 years. You know, I know Eric definitely won't listen to it, but like, you know, it was
I will bust it out every now and then.
it's a cool record.
Good record, you know.
It's a good record. You know,
The funny thing is, I don't like post-hardcore at all anymore.
Are you serious?
You know, I've really, you know, determined that, you know, I'm an 80s hardcore kid, you know? That's the music I really
Wow, it took a long
truly
time
love.
for you to get there. I mean, considering some of the songs you wrote, which were like post-hardcore masterpieces, you know, like
It's weird,
I,
isn't it?
I mean,
But for the last
maybe
10 years, I just kind of, I'm like, yeah, that 90s post-hardcore doesn't do it for me.
okay, fair enough. I mean, it's like it's my
Even though,
religion,
yeah, that's my natural writing style.
yeah. I mean, that's super interesting, but
It's weird.
I get it. Like it would whatever floats your boat, you know. Like, I don't know if do you feel like you'd be able to go back to writing the old school hardcore style?
Well, it's funny because, like I said, I did give it a little shot just to see. And the reason I decided not to do it was it's either writing very 80s style hardcore songs or songs that sounded like they could have been on Buzzy.
Well, that's
And
that's
I
interesting
was
part
like,
about it. Like when like as a general rule, what I wanted to ask you was, do you like? Because I have very specific ideas about hardcore. I feel that hardcore and punk are youth cultures,
yeah,
and it should be written and done by kids who are below a certain age. Because once you get past a certain age, it just becomes nostalgia, and you're just writing on a nostalgia idea. I mean, I could be totally off on that, but like, you know, it's just
no, Artie, I agree with you 100%. And that's what made me decide not to do it. I was like, you know, how cool would it be to do a new Bad Trip record during this pandemic? And then once I sat down and tried to do it, I was like, this is a total nostalgia trip, either for 80s hardcore or 90s post-hardcore. And there's been no musical development on my part. And, you know, I wouldn't want to do, I mean, it should be done by people who are younger and, you
yes,
know,
yes.
we were of our time, you know, the music we did in the 80s was of its time. The music we did in 1990 was of its time, and the music we did in 1995 was of its time. There'd be no value to me to doing 1990s or 1980s style stuff by a bunch of 50-year-olds at this point.
No, it's
So
like
so yeah,
well, you're
I
doing it.
think I agree with you.
Listen, if you want to do it for yourself, that's cool. You have every right to do that. But so that moving on from this, I want to ask you about your profession and what you do. So I'm going to give a little background right now. So when we were touring, we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but Hendon was in law school pretty much the entire time I was in Bad Trip. And, you know, it was pretty interesting to like, I had friends who even came going to law school or doing anything like what you were doing. And I know your dad was a criminal defense lawyer, and you went into the what is it called, the firm. And so like
Family
when you
business.
the family business, yes. Let's talk a little bit about that because I loved some of the things you said to me about it when you first started doing it, and like this idea of criminal defense. Do you still do criminal defense law? Is that
Yeah, that's pretty much all I do. Yeah.
It's interesting, like because it takes a
With a
certain
specialty
mentality.
mostly in appeals.
Okay. Well, it's just interesting to me because like the mentality of being a criminal defense lawyer is such a weird thing. Like, you know, like you watch Law and Order, or you watch, like, you know, like any of these shows, and they show the criminal defense lawyer. What's you would always come back at me when I would say something. You'd be like, well, what's the law? Because the law is what's important. It doesn't matter about anything else. It's not about personalities. It's about the law. So talk a little bit about it. Like, I'm so
I'm
interested
still
in
that
what
way.
you do. Okay.
All right.
It's just
Well,
an interesting. Go for it.
I mean, you know, I obviously, you know, my dad was not a lawyer when I was a kid. He only went to law school when I was. He went to law school the same time. He started law school the same year I started college. I think. He was in
Wow.
advertising before that, but you know, I kind of got to experience him going to law school, and you know, it seemed I was a pretty smart kid, and it seemed like, as you had alluded to earlier, you're right. The members of Bad Trip, you know, none of us were like, hey, let's do a band and become professional musicians. You know, for me, I definitely reached the point of like working in restaurants for 7 or 8 years where I was like, I know that I do not want to play in a band and work in a bar. I mean, it just, you know, I don't drink. It's not that lifestyle just didn't work for me. And I mean, and you were in a band with me, and you know that, you know, like the, you know, the side part of being in a band, you know, the hanging out, all of that never appealed to me. I always had to go walking, you know, I'd have to go walking around whatever city we were
Well,
in because I didn't want
yeah.
to
I mean, I mean, you were pretty good about hanging out, and I was also pretty good about walking around cities as well. But, you know,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you were pretty good about doing the hang. You were,
Yeah.
but
I guess I got better at it. By the time you were in the band, I guess I had gotten better at it. But I didn't enjoy that. So I knew that like the being in a band lifestyle was not a long-term thing for me. And you know, Atlantic Records came to look at us towards
yeah,
the end of our run. And
I
you know,
remember.
for the last 3-4 years, it was always like, you know, I know I'm going to law school, I'm going to be a lawyer, but you know, how could I not see what we can do with this band? So, you know, we just have to keep doing it. But, you know, at some point, I think before you had joined, because yes, I was already in law school when you joined, I was influenced a lot by Greg Graffin of Bad Religion, and just seeing, you know, this guy had a master's degree, you know, went on to get a PhD, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, that's, you can both.
You can do both. Yeah.
And I was very interested in, you know, civil liberties. I was a huge Nat Hentoff reader in the Village Voice. And those things were just, I was a sociology major in college. I mean, that was just my wheelhouse. I was interested in it. And, you know,
I mean,
coming from the punk rock, of course, was, you know, I was on the side of the defendants.
yeah. So how like did you? Because I remember having conversations with you about like certain mobsters that maybe your dad might have defended and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like you, is there anybody famous that you defended in this time, or any good
I mean,
stories of?
you know, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah, all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, it's weird because of what you're doing. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, you know, you shouldn't be representing people who, you know, could pay you. You know, I'm like, always like, that's very nice
That's
of you to
weird.
say. Thank you. But you know, the idea that I should be more, I should be just doing this as, you know, help you know, the poor innocent wrongly
Right.
accused people, and you know that you do represent some of those people, but you ultimately have to represent everybody who's charged with a criminal offense. And my dad had a very good point, and I really believe this, that when you're representing somebody who's been charged with a crime, everybody is against them. Society is, the weight of the government is against them. Members, their own former friends sometimes are against them. They have nobody on their side. And you're the person who's on their side, and they need you. They're maybe at the lowest point in their entire life. They might be facing, very long time in prison. And, everybody's against them except you. So, you just have to remember that. And I always remember, the humanity of my clients, because, society generally doesn't. They're just skells or the bad guy, or or the other opposite. They're some powerful guy who deserves to be brought down 15 notches. And either way, they're a human being with a family, and facing very serious consequences, and they need your help. They need somebody more than most people ever need somebody at that time in their lives.
Dude, all right.
So that's my day-to-day motivation.
You ever, all right, have you, in your, like, how many years you've been doing law now?
25 years now.
Yeah.
25 years.
All right, 25 years. How many people have you gotten off?
I will say that there are definitely a few people who I very much believe were guilty and did what they were accused of doing.
That was going to be my next question.
Who we managed to
Okay.
Yeah.
And do they lie to you?
Yeah, we
like,
managed to get
I know
them.
you're not allowed to talk about it, but they're like, do they just like, hey, I'm innocent? And then you're like, okay, dude, you got to tell me the truth. Like, I don't know how this works, because I only know from like Law and Order, do they just like sit there going like, I didn't do this, and you're just like, yeah, dude, you're kind of guilty, so we gotta figure something out.
It depends. In just general terms, I mean, usually you get a mix of people who absolutely swear up and down that they're innocent. A lot of times what you get is a hybrid situation where people are accused of doing, maybe they did do something,
Right.
but it's not nearly as bad as what.
Right. So they get accused of multiple things, and they're like, maybe they did one of those or two of those things. Yeah.
That happens a lot. Or just, I did this, but, it wasn't out of, greed. It was, out of, and believe me, this has actually happened. You get people who, like a Jean Valjean type of situation. I mean, not literally, but, I need to, help somebody. So I did this. And yes, I didn't follow all the reporting requirements for, federal taxes, but, there's a reason why. A lot of times what people really take to heart is they're saying I'm this kind of person and I'm not this kind of person. Here's what really happened. But since the prosecutors are charging them, with serious crimes under, usually a theory that, they're a bad criminal, there's not a lot of common ground, and you end up having to fight it. Other people want to, look, maybe something happened, maybe it didn't, but, I will probably be found guilty if I went to trial, and therefore I'd like to try to, work something out where I can get something that I can live with and that everybody can live with. And that's frankly most cases.
Right. Well, anybody
most
in
cases
trouble,
do end up guilty.
Brendan White, sorry, but hen doggy dog, Brendan White, .com. I'm just kidding.
Most of what I do is actually appeals where, the person has actually already been found guilty. And now and usually they're already in prison. And now it's even harder.
What kind of, let me ask you, like, I'm sorry, Brendan, but like, what kind of crimes are we talking about? Like, so if somebody's appealing, are we talking about like they're in federal prison for white collar crime, or like is it?
I've done everything. I've done everything from turnstile hopping to the most horrific crimes you can imagine, and everything in between, white collar, blue collar.
You done murder?
Several cases that
have you done murder?
Publicity. I've done guys who, I have somebody who was believed to have committed 70 murders, and some horrific stuff.
Holy shit!
And
That's
then a
nuts.
lot of stuff in between. It is. It's crazy. But, again, like I said, I always treat my clients as human beings, and they are human beings, and always try to establish a real human rapport with them, and I think they appreciate that. And I know I work hard. I'm a good writer, so that helps doing appeals.
Right.
And as you had pointed out earlier on, you got to keep your eye on the ball. Does the law allow this? Did the court follow the law in what it did here? Did it improperly let this evidence in? And ultimately, those are the things that matter in the law. There's this high profile case going on right now out in Minnesota, obviously, and everybody has their opinion one way or another. But ultimately, it's what is the evidence that comes before the jury? What is the law there, and
Let
what
me
do
ask you. Let me
these
ask you
this
about that.
particular
What do you think? What do you think about? I mean, the video is pretty damning.
you have a video. So it's
so
fascinating from a criminal
you're the worst. No, what do you think about it? What do you think
with
about it?
a
Do you have an opinion
with
about it?
a
You don't have to if you don't want to. It's fine.
well, I'll just give you the perspective of a criminal defense lawyer on this. The evidence is pretty clear as to what happened, what the Chauvin did. So you don't have an argument that he didn't do it. You don't have an argument that it was done in self-defense. You don't have an argument that this guy was really the aggressor or anything like that. So you have to come up with another argument. And,
Well, the only thing they have is the
was
drug is the whatever drugs he had in his system.
right. And look, when you get into law, the element you have to actually have caused the death. So that's the defense argument. This is this defendant's actions did not cause the death. I mean, that's a completely legitimate defense. And I am going to punt a little bit. I mean, I don't know. In the interest of full disclosure, I have not been watching the trial on television.
That's fine.
So
Neither have I. Neither have I. I just saw the
Yeah.
video, and I was like, okay, this kind of looks bad. I mean, not kind of looks bad. It looks really
No,
bad.
but the video is, I mean, it's extremely damning. All they have is, like I said, a pretty technical defense that didn't actually cause the death. Whether a jury buys that, probably
Right.
not.
It's
I
about
would
whether the
say
jury buys it or not, right? Like that's the whole.
yeah, in the end, that's what trials are about. Yeah.
I love it, man. Like, and thank you so much for like being really honest about being what you do, because it's an interesting job that you have, and like it's I've been dealing quite a bit with it. We can talk off camera about some of this shit, but like it's just so like the way that lawyers deal with shit, and it's just different than regular people deal with things. And
Yeah.
like when you talk to lawyers,
I have a pretty
like
good. I'm a pretty
they
good
just
lawyer
talking
type
fucking,
person.
but the lawyers talk in circles all the time. It's like this constant circle of talking and like, well, it might be this and it might be that, but I'm not sure, and I don't want to commit, and and like the evidence says this, but I'm not really sure, and like it's like I love that you're like willing to talk about all that stuff, and like thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and it's
Oh, my pleasure. But
it,
just to take the side of the lawyers for a second, that it really is the way you have to be as a lawyer. And I tell people all the time when they want me, just tell me, tell me. I'm like, look, you have to understand. I could tell you that, but I'd just be making something up, because the truth is I don't know. It could be this or it could be that. We don't know that yet. And yeah, I know that's frustrating, but it's also honest.
right. No, I hear you. Dealing with a lawsuit currently, and like it's just.
I'm sorry. Believe me, I know how frustrating
it just gets
the
boring
legal
after a
system
while.
is.
And like,
I know that your life obviously cannot have been easy for the past year. I mean,
what
this
are you
is
talking
just
about, man? It's been great. I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting in the basement of the other bar that I own, not St. Vitus, which I've been open for a year trying to deal with. But I
I know.
You've
I
got to
know,
be thankful for
Artie.
what you have.
That sucks. Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it's easy for me to say. I mean, truth be told, I mean, about 4 years ago, the building I had worked in for 20 years got sold, and we started, and everybody's like, okay, where are we going to go now? And I made the determination that, guess what? I've been working in this office for 20 years. I don't need an office anymore. I'm working from home. So for the last 4 years, I've been sitting right in the very chair I am right now. And this is my office in my apartment in Stuyvesant Town in Manhattan. And so thankfully for me, I was very well situated to handle, this
Yeah,
unprecedented.
man. Yeah. I mean,
But I never forget that, I'm very fortunate in that respect, and that
I'm also
many people have been hit
Hendon,
hard.
I'm also very fortunate in that at least I had this place that to generate something as far as income went. But like, it is what it is, and we're all going to get through it the way we go through it. I'm a little, I'm not angry, but I'm just like disappointed in people who ran away. I think that's lame, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
it
We
kind
never
of,
left. I mean, we've been here the whole time.
yeah. I mean, like, and I would never expect anything less of you. Like you're not that type of person, but I do want to thank you for doing this interview, and dude, like, you want to write a new Bad Trip record? If Luke's not available, give me a call. Uh, I
Awesome.
know Eric will never work with me, but that's cool. And I love you, and you're fucking awesome. And thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. We're gonna get that Bad Trip stuff out, remastered and sounding awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. But before I go, I just want to thank you for doing that, because, of a piece with everything else I've said about Bad Trip, we're just too lame and too unable to get our act together to ever make Bad Trip stuff, available to people. And I hope there's some people
Yeah,
who'd
no,
like to hear it.
and I
But
get that. I knew that.
and as you wisely point out, the artwork and the T-shirts were great. So
Fucking brilliant.
getting that
Yeah.
stuff out is awesome. So thank you so much for doing that. I know Fred and I greatly appreciate it,
Thank you, dude.
and I'm sure everybody else does. And thank you for doing this. It's really been fun.
Awesome. Love you, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too.
Bye.
Take care, brother.